What's up, everyone? On this episode of the AI Operator podcast, we sit down with Luca Barboni. He is the founder of 247X, basically a dedicated growth team behind some of the world's leading companies and Italian scale up success stories. Now, Luca is going to share how 247X applies a proprietary growth process powered by AI, data, and experimentation to ultimately deliver measurable results from scaling startups to guiding Fortune 500 companies. Luca, thank you for being with us today. How are we doing?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me, Jordan. Thank you for the invite to this podcast. Glad to have this chat with you.
Amazing. Yeah, no, we're super excited. And I'm so blessed to be able to talk with people all over the world. I had a guest from like Ireland earlier this week, someone from the UK. You are in Rome. I'm in Germany right now. So it's so cool to learn about people doing business international. It's one of the things I love the most about being online. But I figure we just start off with something simple. We'll just start off with, you sharing, I guess, a little bit, if you could, about, 247X and what you guys do. If you just synthesize it down, and then we'll kind of dive into that. And I also want to talk a little bit about how you arrived at, 247X and kind of your entrepreneurial journey. I'd love to learn more about that. So if you could, that would be a great starting point for us.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to start with telling a little bit more about 247X. So 247X is a consultancy firm born in Italy in 2018. So far, we do 1.5 million in revenue, which relatively for our market, it's huge because out of consultancy companies in Italy, only the 3%, 4% in the Italian market go over 1 million in the field of consultancy and marketing, consultancy, communication, and so on. And our core model since the beginning was basically this kind of idea of providing our clients with a dedicated growth hacking team that's ready to start both with strategy and operations. And so our idea was not to get into the market of web agencies, digital marketing agencies, which have a model which oftentimes is based on the amount of budget they handle or the number of channels they handle. And whenever there's a little change, they need to go back into estimate and quotation phase and do another quotation. 100% of the founders, including me, comes from being startup founders. So we know that changing things as the day goes, it's a daily activity. It's part of the job. Comes with the job description when you do innovation. So we built our model around sprints and around becoming partners, as we were saying before starting the podcast, partnering with the clients. And so really our main competitor is the client deciding to hire growth hackers and building for the first time their growth hacking team inside the company, which is something that ultimately many of them end up doing. And that's a good thing. But if they need performances this year, that's a very slow process. You need to find resources, train them, build processes for the first time. So we do a kind of both, but our core model is to provide them with a dedicated growth hacking team that can already start doing experiments for them and with them.
Amazing. I love that. And I love that you use the word experiment. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. One of my favorite books is The Lean Startup. And, I think it's a lot of people struggle in the early stages of a business with experimenting with too many things. So it is a fine line between running, enough experiments and successful experiments from just running too many. And I'm very ADHD. So I can struggle with that sometimes if I'm not careful and if I don't align myself with, what we're really trying to accomplish. So before 247, take me through a little bit of a background, if you would, of, who Luca is. How did you end up founding, this organization? I would love to know more.
Sure. So my background is in psychology. So
Didn't
I didn't
expect that.
study.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't study marketing, business, and stuff like that, economics. And but on the other hand, I always had my hands in tech because of my father. He's an IT guy.
Okay.
So I actually learned English by playing video games and listening to rock music. That's my education. And I always played around with developing low code or no code video games, building websites on the side. And so yeah, after psychology, since I also am very much ADHD out of bureaucracy, which in Italy is a great thing, is a huge deal. I realized I couldn't subscribe to the following year of specialization in psychology, so I found myself with no possibility to pursue university and no job.
Yeah.
So I decided I will study a bit, get more like certifications or something. And one of the first things that I did was join a course on digital marketing, web and social media marketing. And to me at the time, marketing was very cringe-y. But what I really liked about digital entrepreneurship is the fact that you don't have to ask permission. You can hire yourself and just go. Buy a domain, do stuff, communicate, outreach to your audience. And as you were saying, lean startup, as long as you're solving a problem and there's a need on the other side of the screen, something is going to work. So either you monetize your side project, or so you don't need a job because you're already monetizing, or you can always build very easily an amazing portfolio that any other candidates in any hiring process will not have if they're fresh from studies and they have no practical experience. So with that mindset, I started doing a bit of freelancing and a lot of side projects. And I ended up very soon working in a digital startup with which I've been in 2 years. And they were kind of doing AI before it was cool. And it was a direct competitor to If This Then That and Zapier, but with much less funding. We then pivoted with B2B, worked on IoT for a while, and providing this kind of API integrations, but for IoT things. And while I was working in the startup, I discovered what growth hacking was, because when I was studying what US marketers and people in Silicon Valley were doing and advocating for, I was realizing that why the fuck aren't we doing that shit? Why are we reinventing the wheel in here? And no one was talking in those terms in Italy and in Europe in general, I would say. Wow. That was 2014, 15. So complete desert. So I started studying that stuff, testing it within and without the startup, realized it was working very well. And so after like 2 years, I decided to fire myself and become like the Italian growth guy, because there was a complete blue ocean with a vertical approach to this thing. So I've been freelancing in and outside of Italy, working also in Silicon Valley with a 500 global company in 2017, also an AI company, by the way. And then in 2018, I decided to, let's say, scale my freelancing activity on growth by being able to provide also the operational side. So building a team and building this service with which we can also help our clients with operations, not just training or strategy.
Incredible. That's a really cool story, especially recognizing that, the US was doing something and there was this like gap, obviously, in Italy, and that, just the assumption of like, why are we not just doing more of that, right? And I think a lot of business owners really get that part wrong. Of, it's like you almost fall in this trap of like, there's a better way to do it, or there's a different way to do it. And a lot of times there's not. There's just a simple system that someone's already perfected, and you can ultimately use that. And so many business owners can benefit from, having someone in their court that's already done that, like yourself. So that's a really cool journey. I have to ask, what kind of video games? What were your video games back in the day?
Oh, well, I used to play a lot with RPG Maker. So mostly clones of the old Final Fantasies, like
wow.
SNES.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember I recreated from scratch the full map of Narsh, the first city of Final Fantasy VI, like kind of steampunk place, by ripping the exact pieces, but recreating it inside that program.
Incredible.
And
that's awesome.
And also the funny thing is that up until like 2 years ago, I was never able in my life to release not even a small demo, a complete video game. So only long time after I mastered the concept of what an MVP is, how important it is to release fast and so on, I was able to finally defeat my perfectionism and release stuff. I actually, since a year or so, I am also active as a game designer on itch.io. I have my own thing going with video games, also board games, role-playing games. But
That's awesome.
yeah. And,
That's amazing.
without reading Lean Startup, I wouldn't have been able to release something complete and usable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've been a big video game guy myself. I've done it all. I played a ton of RuneScape, if you remember RuneScape.
Oh, sure.
Ton of RuneScape, and then I've really moved into kind of the first person shooters. So a ton of Call of Duty. I love video games. I've spent probably way too much time playing them. But yeah, so I had to ask because, like I said, I don't play them anymore. I wish I did, but yeah. Always had
my excuse now is that I'm making them.
There you go. I love that. You got to test them, right?
Yeah. I even got my marriage proposal was inside a video game I developed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Luca, so I wanted to ask, I know you have kind of like a 5-part framework, I believe it is. I don't want to speak too much on that of how you guys help companies scale and kind of the things that you look at. But if you were to give, I'd say, a newer founder advice on the top 3 things that they could do tomorrow to really and what I love about growth hacking and you guys is speed, right? How do we create speed and momentum in this? What would be like your top 3 things that someone could do tomorrow to increase speed inside of their organization?
Sure.
Aside from hiring Luca, obviously, which is probably your best bet, right?
Yeah. So first thing I would do a check on the life phase that the company or the specific project is facing, because growth can mean completely different things based on the phase you're facing. And the most simple division we can make is if you're pre-product market fit or post-product market fit. So I know that in more evolved ecosystems, growth happens only from product market fit and on. So there's no way to talk about growth. And technically, it is true. But since both lean startup and growth hacking, they have the same foundation, which is validated learning and continuous experimentations. If you're before product market fit, you should most likely focus your 80-20 more on the product and optimizing the mid to lower funnel, and a bit, even if it's paradoxical, a bit less on the upper funnel and distribution, which means even if you're not that famous, those 10 people, those 10 customers, they must be incredibly happy about you. So being fast in that case means maximizing the number of experiments you do on the product and experience part. And you still need to do traffic and be known. Otherwise, you wouldn't have reliable data because you're only known by your cousin and your mother. And that's not good feedback. While if you're post-product market fit, of course, it's total opposite. Supposedly, you have a funnel that works, and increasing velocity means increasing the speed with which, the volume with which you can get more people inside the funnel. That's already been proven to work. So, but you wouldn't know what to do if you don't have your numbers and you cannot access this kind of self-diagnosis of where are we in our growth phase. Are we pre-product market fit, close to the market fit, or after product market fit? Do we have enough maturity to know that if we just bring more water to our meal, things will just keep growing indefinitely? And so that's the first part. Second part, which goes along with that, is make sure to segment your customer journey in different phases and assign metrics to each phase. In growth, we usually do that with the pirate funnel or variation of that, growth loops, growth funnels, because when you try to move fast, you will find roadblocks. But a roadblock in acquisition requires completely different approaches and skills and experiments than a roadblock in retention. So if your problem is retention, you can even increase the budget on campaigns, get more funding, and double advertising. You will still have a bucket with a lot of holes. You'd rather work on segmentations, email marketing, community, understand why they're leaving, time to value, wow moments, and so on and so forth. So there might be completely different, even skills to call in for to solve this problem. So if you just see the business as a whole, you might not have enough data, enough clarity about where the problem is, and so what type of experiment you should do. And third point, I would say that you need to bring in a scientific mindset when you speak about experimentations. Because as you said, many people get lost in testing many different things. But if you did your homework, experiments are different hows to make a what happen. What people mistake is that they do experiments on the what. What the fuck? No, the what should be clear. What should happen? We should get to 100K monthly recurring revenue. We're not debating that. We're debating how we're getting there. We're debating what is the best way, what is the fastest way, the most cost effective way, the smartest way, but we're not debating that. So many times, founders, especially at the beginning, they mistake experimenting on the best way to achieve or make an OKR happen, achieve a certain results, with let's try to be 10,000 different companies at the same time. That's not what experimentation is. So first you get alignment on the goals, and the experiments allows you to find the best way to get there using reverse engineering and experimentation. So be very clear first, then organized, and just focus on the process. That is the contradiction of growth hacking or growth hackers. Like you need to arm yourself to be able to do as many experiments as you can, but you hope that you're going to get there with the least amount of experiments, because at some point you're going to run out of time and money. So that's also how you recognize a good growth hacker from a bad growth hacker. They follow the same process, but one can get you there with 6 experiments, another can get you there with 60 experiments. Process is the same, but if you're better at interpreting data and moving through there, you will get there faster, sooner.
Amazing. So let's talk about that for a second. The person, from 6 experiments to 60 experiments, obviously being able to interpret the data, like you just mentioned, is going to be one of the most important things. What else is it that you see, around successful experiments that really drive growth and less iteration, if you will, to ultimately achieve that outcome that you guys are looking at?
Mm-hmm.
If you have the shared clarity, I guess, on what the problem is, because I do feel like most businesses get stuck there, and it's hard for them to even articulate what they're trying to do, or they're so ADHD about, like you said, the what, that they don't have time to even finish the experiment. So
I feel one of the most common bottlenecks is that even in small companies, small teams, or startups, which supposedly should have like the DNA of innovation, agile teams, a very short time from idea to execution, and yet even in teams of 4 people, I can see sometimes a kind of silo separation of let's say innovation and ordinary administration. So many times, even by accident, you discover things sometimes, even if you're not that as organized in doing growth experiments. But there is no so what. So I'll give you an example. Working for a brief time with a US-based software as a service startup, which is doing pretty well, like millions and millions in yearly revenue. Kind of by accident, going through the data, I discovered that like they had a spike in revenue at some point, and 70% of that spike was generated by one customer. So in their mind, their customer base and their revenue was made of many, many little transactions of many, many companies. No, bro, you had like 7 companies generating 70% of your revenue, and you didn't know this. So cool, awesome. Now, what do we do with this insight?
Mm-hmm.
What is the process that from there allows your company to capitalize on this discovery? Because experiments bring this type of discoveries, this type of epiphanies. But then so what?
So what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how do we scale this discovery to the whole organization? How can this become a task also for the customer success team and the marketing team? Maybe we should then do some market research on big corporates we didn't consider actually their best clients. And how about the customer success team starts calling those guys and understand better who they are so we can find more of them? So like you can discover by accident a specific, I don't know, format of LinkedIn post can easily go viral. Awesome. So what? Are we building a custom GPT to replicate it and post it weekly from the founder's profile, or it's just going to be, hey, cool idea in a meeting, and then it dies there. So it's the same with hackathons. Cool activities, companies say, we are innovative, we do hackathons. Yeah, but what then? What happens after the winning idea of the hackathon? Do you do it for real? How does it work?
Yeah. I love that. And yeah, I love the and so what, kind of framework there at the end with any kind of problem or thing that you identify inside of an organization. And I was actually listening to, I think it was Alex Hormozy video not like a couple days ago, and he was talking about parties, and he was talking about so many people have a bunch of little parties happening, and they're never that cool parties because they're a bunch of small parties. But if you instead combine all 3 or 4 of your parties together, well, you'd have one really cool party, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of what reminds or made me think of what you just said. Even inside of the organization, if you find that, and so what, aligning all your departments and your, objectives across the organization on that one central mission of identifying what does this mean and ultimately what can we do about it, instead of having each one of them working on their own little party and then one department trying to, lift all the weight of this thing that we just figured out. So, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to transition a little bit into the AI piece because obviously this is the AI Operator podcast, and I love talking about founder stories and growth and everything we have been. But it is, really about where AI currently sits and how we see it, impacting organizations on kind of an operational level. Obviously RevPilot, our organization is, sales process focused company. And I'm really interested all the time of what AI is working and what AI is not working. And a lot, I think it applies to what you said with the, and so what, because I have a lot of people coming to me and saying, I need, AI. And it's like, okay, what for? Right? Why? What problem are we trying to solve? And usually, it's crazy how often it happens. We're not even trying to solve a problem. We just feel like we need AI because we feel like we're falling behind as an organization, or these organizations do. But there's definitely amazing use cases for AI, obviously, and it can completely change an organization. And then there's a lot of use cases and what I call just trash AI, which is like AI wrappers and things being white labeled and sold 4 different times as a different product. So you have a couple yourself. I know you have Hubble GPT. I would love to learn a little more about that, what the intention behind that was. And then where you are seeing AI in your process really help push things forward and, create velocity in that process of, iterating and figuring out these experiments.
Sure. So as you pointed out, we kind of have like 2 souls in using AI. One is working with AI on ourselves, our internal processes, because ultimately for a consulting firm that's focusing on, let's say, done for you services, it can be crucial to increase margins for every on every client project, of course. And the other approach to AI is the fact that we have more than half of the co-founders of 24/7X are software developers. So we always had a strong accent on technology and also on developing proprietary technology. Sometimes small spin-offs like boats or other type of potential startup that could spin off of the company. And recently, of course, we'll be focusing a lot on AI. So we also have our own AI products that, of course, are sometimes part of our consultancy project, but also they can be they live on the market as a standalone software that with their own customer base. And on the first side, the main driver for us was that of increasing margins. So understanding how we can move from a human intensive workforce to an AI augmented human workforce working on clients. So because the strategy part and the width of knowledge to be good at growth is very wide. So for our senior people, we have a limit of how many projects they can follow. And so basically the capacity of how much money 24/7x can make per month, you can calculate it easily by checking what is the maximum capacity of clients at the same time and what is the average value for client. Yeah. And you can get to the maximum capacity just by multiplying how many senior growth hackers do we have? 4. How many maximum projects they can handle at the same time? 4. 4 multiplied 4, 16 projects, multiplied for value. That's our cap. So how do we scale the organization? AI for us, it's key in that. So we started doing some analysis internally on the most common tasks, most lengthy, time-consuming tasks, and then integrating, kind of doing a customer journey analysis, but not of the customer, but of the employee. So employee sits at the computer, opens this tab, opens the meta ads panel, does this, reads this data. So kind of mapping internal operations to then including AI workflows, and then in some parts even agents most recently, to do part of the job, so that then we can basically break our own business model limitation of having a very narrow, limited amount of projects per person, so that we can scale the revenue potential of the organizations. And this also applies, of course, also not only to us, but also to some clients project that we do. And on the other side, kind of following the lean startup approach, we always started from use cases that we know from the field. So, like for example, another element that for which we are very different from the average web agency is that we don't do reports. We very rarely do reports. Why? Because clients can chat with us on Slack every single day, every single hour. We do bi-weekly sprint calls, so they always know what's happening. And we both have access to analytics dashboards, Lucas Studio dashboards, and so on and so forth. But they cannot read them. Yeah. So it's useless. And that's also why reports are useless, because they cannot read them. So if we use a layer of AI to first aggregate data in the same place, as we do with data visualization, and also provide customers a conversational interface so they can ask questions to the data as they would with a data analyst, yep, we would also enable them to see the outcome of experiments, especially when they're not successful. So there's more need for investigation and go deep the insights. And that's the idea behind Hubble GPT, which wants to be a kind of another way to interrogate the data that's not just graphs, which still you need to be able to read and interpret. Yeah. But it's more conversational, that easy, and can provide, on one end, more value and control over how the money they spend is going on the client side, and also save time on our side, because many meetings can be avoided if you just ask the GPT and not us. You have instant access, real-time access to the information. They already have, in our case, instant access to the information, but they don't have a kind of translator. That's it. And this way they do have. So it's this very there's a lot of synergy with how we work. And
I'm smiling. You got me smiling over here because one of my best YouTube videos is actually quite literally like Hubble GPT, but like it's essentially built with N8N and Telegram or Slack. And we had the very same problem, because I have been in operations for eight years now, maybe a little longer. And for me, I love to look at dashboards. I love to look at a spreadsheet, and my brain very quickly can go pick out exactly what's wrong with any of the data in there, and start to, add it up, and it just kind of recognizes what's wrong with it. But that is not the same for a lot of people. And, so then it was like, okay, visualization. Well, we can create a nice dashboard, right? Is better than a spreadsheet, obviously. But you still have to understand what you're filtering for on the dashboard, and why you would filter for something, right? And whatnot. So that's when we kind of arrived at very similar, it sounds like, to Hubble GPT, which was, what if we had a conversational interface with our data where someone can send literally a voice note and say, hey, how many sales were there last week and how did that compare to the week before, or whatever it may be. And it was such a cool use case for us. Even for me, because I mean, how many times you have to wait on your data analyst half the time to go pull the numbers so that is an incredible use case. And I
Thank you.
love that you guys, arrived at that. Um, and then us being an agency as well, we run into the same challenges also, which is scaling an agency that, ultimately you're, an account based kind of
Hmm.
agency, right? You have people inside of your organization, they own X amount of accounts, however that many that can be. And a question I have for you, because you've obviously done a great job at scaling your organization. How do you handle, and this is like what the agency trap that I feel like a lot of actually people probably listening run into also is let's say it's you as a founder, you get 4 clients, you're getting really busy, you can hardly hold, everything together. You're wearing all the hats. You hire someone to take on some of the fulfillment. You train them. They start taking some of the accounts. Well, now your revenue's a little bit tight. Your profit margin is now pretty thin. So you go out, you get 4 more clients, right? And now you both are wearing all the hats, and you're hitting bandwidth again, but your margins are looking great. And then you bring in another person, and your margins now start to shrink again as you do this. For a lot of people, that inflection point is a very
Hmm.
difficult part of the agency life, which is revenues going up and then you hire and it dips. And then you got to kind of make it through that sketchy little section. What
Hmm.
has been something maybe that's helped you in that, especially for other agency owners that has helped you get to that $1 million mark?
Hmm. So, 3 things I can think of. First, work a lot on how binding are your contracts on the legal side. It sounds boring and stupid, but you will always feel on the edge until you have at least 12 years of work planned in the future with that same client. And there are very, very fucking bad consequences for them if they pull out sooner. So work on your contracts, optimize them legally. You don't need to scam anyone, but make sure they are solid. Make sure,
Yeah.
bro, I can change the destiny of your company or I can try my best. But if you leave after 5 minutes, nothing will happen. Stay with me for 12 months or find somebody else. So, first, work on the contracts to make them solid so that you have a bit of revenue predictability. Second point is I see many times we ourselves did this mistake of thinking that like you sell people's hours. Maybe you don't do it in the open, like you don't tell your clients how many hours, but that's how service works. You sell
Yeah.
people's time. You're a broker of time of humans, of skilled humans. And in many cases, you think like I have this many hours to sell because I have 3 people. So once I hire a fourth person, I have more hours to sell. So it's like you are a factory and you're building a new machine. And that is wrong. When you hire someone, you don't have a new machine. You have the components to have a new machine in the factory. You're gonna need at least 6 months of training on the job with you until that person is able to give full capacity as the others to your clients because they're new hire. Doesn't matter if they've done this job for 20 years. You have a specific company culture, specific processes. It's going to take time for them to be as productive as the other guys. So don't, if you, so meaning if you want to increase your capacity, start 6 months in advance from the moment you know that capacity will express the maximum potential.
Wow.
And because it's going to take time to make them as productive. Otherwise, they're going to make more damage than other stuff because they're new. They don't know how you work. They don't know that there is this process. They don't know that you're supposed to send this email after. They don't know that you're supposed to not say yes to everything the client asks, and so on.
Yeah.
So at least 6 months of training. And third thing is, since still that inflection point is very tough, I would say I'm not a fan of this kind of fully liquid companies made of freelancers. We believe in hiring people for real, and because that's what you sell. So freelance gets in love with a girl from Cuba, moves there, never wants to do ads again, you're ruined. So you tell talent is the asset you're based on, and so, but at the same time, if you have a good mix of internal talent and freelancers, you can use freelancers hours as a kind of pillow to face small increases in demand, new client, and see how it goes before you make a strong decision, such as hiring, and then two clients are leaves you, and then you have this person with half the time free of clients. It's just a cost, and you don't know what the fuck to do.
Amazing.
So you use freelancers as a kind of jolly card to make sure you have a kind of cost-effective pillow with these small inflections. Of course, if you get 10 clients at the same time, all new, hire. But if you have one more, two more, you're not sure, use freelancers for that.
Incredible. Luca, I could talk with you all day, but we only schedule 45 minutes. So
Sure.
I want to start to wrap up this episode. And I would love to potentially even get you on another episode. I think
Would love to.
so much we could talk about. And you provide so much value.
Thank you.
As we start to wrap up, where can people find Luca? Is it LinkedIn, or like, where do you prefer people to find you? I'm an Instagram guy personally. I hate getting I have a LinkedIn. My company team manages it. LinkedIn scares me, honestly. I get pitched everything on there every time I log in. Where do you hang out?
Yeah. I would say that I'm a LinkedIn guy. Yeah. Cool. So most definitely the most common channel is LinkedIn. And then for now, I hold in Italian only a Substack where I'm kind of doing building public of the companies I'm involved, 24/7X included. And I have a Telegram channel, but most likely LinkedIn I have in both languages. And most likely, if not this year, the next, I will most likely start producing also more content in English. I have some content in English based on the past phase of my life when I was freelancing and working internationally.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, we will get all of your links and make sure it's in the description below. So if you're listening, make sure you check out Luca, give him a follow on LinkedIn. And yeah, what a cool story. Like I said, I could pick your brain forever. So I appreciate you making time for our audience to learn a little bit about what you do and sharing some of your best practices in this space specifically. And, growth hacking, and growth strategy, I think, is such an important thing for anyone thinking about it. Obviously, I've been in the consulting space for quite a while. And I know what we can do for someone's sales process, right? But that's only one part of the organization. And we're not so much focused on, necessarily the growth aspect. But don't hesitate to reach out to someone like Luca if you are in that position where you just can't figure out what is next. Maybe you're not scaling at the speed at which you want to. Or even if you're going backwards, that's probably a great time to pull the ripcord and have someone like Luca get you out of that situation and get you moving on the path that you should be. So, Luca, again, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you
we'll
for
see you
having me.
next time, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course.